a new suspect was developing.
Yes, sir. Come on in.
Charles Lord began taking an active role in the investigation, often stopping by the sheriff's office to check on their progress.
The Roberts, Doe Roberts? Yes, sir.
The deputies became suspicious. He seemed too interested. Their suspicion deepened because of the peculiar nature of the phone calls he claimed he got from the kidnapper.
Charles Lord stated he received several phone calls from the kidnapper. He did say that he talked with Doe Roberts, which was unusual because none of the other callers talked with Doe Roberts.
But agents never got tapes of the calls.
But every time he received a telephone call, it appeared that our equipment didn't work.
Over the next week, Lord reported another ransom letter and one of Doe's scarves placed in his mailbox. Agents recovered no evidence from the items, but hoped their camera captured images of the kidnapper. They had plenty of the regular mail carrier. But when the tape got to where the kidnapper should appear, it went blank.
When the equipment that was placed at Charles Lord's residence continued to fail, I just thought we had poor equipment. And eventually, it became apparent that somebody was tampering with it.
Agents suspected the interference came from Charles Lord. Then the victim's husband, Alan Roberts, reported a strange encounter with Lord. He said the night before, at the Eads Community Center, Lord summoned him to a private meeting. Alan was surprised when his friend offered to help get Doe back for a price.
Alan Roberts told me that Charles Lord had advised that he had underworld contacts and that there was information available if Charles could get some money to pay for it. Also, Alan advised at that time that Charles Lord was wearing a gun.
It was clear Lord was somehow involved. But investigators needed more than suspicion. They needed evidence. On March 4th, 1993, 7 months after Doe disappeared, there was another twist in the case. Memphis news anchor Joe Birch received a call at his office.
I've never recorded a telephone conversation before, but I decided that I would record this conversation. The call set off a trigger in my mind that this could be the same individual who's been making the anonymous calls in the Doe Roberts case, and I tried to get the man to stay on the line for as long as he would stay.
As Birch spoke to the man with the Asian accent, he tried to elicit details as to who the caller was and what happened to Doe. When Birch tried to set up a ransom drop, the caller hung up.
Hello? Hello? I took the tape directly into my boss's office. We immediately called the FBI and the Shelby County Sheriff's Department.
What can you tell us about Doe Roberts?
Investigators agreed to WMC TV airing the tape, hoping it might flush the kidnapper out. It worked. The kidnapper called back. He was angry they aired the tape and demanded no more coverage. But this time, Joe Birch got him to do what no one else had: arrange a ransom drop. Agents and sheriff's inspectors staked out the drop location, ready to grab the caller who had eluded them for so long.
Is that her?
That's her.
Could be a positive.
Yeah.
As instructed, a reporter from WMC TV drove to the spot with $80,000 in cash.
It's her, but I don't see anybody else. Do you see anybody else?
Everyone waited, hoping.
Sit tight. Sit tight. We may have somebody else. They may be waiting. Contact.
But the kidnapper never showed.
She's leaving. Okay.
It didn't happen.
One more disappointment in a frustrating investigation.
1909, be advised, subject has just left. No contact. Show us going ahead and clearing the scene.
Other deputies observed Charles Lord was home the entire time. Weeks passed with no movement on the case. Then, in June 1993, the kidnapper arranged another drop. He called two of Doe's nephews and told them to bring the ransom money to a local motel. Soon, the elusive kidnapper finally would surface. In June 1993, investigators working the Doe Roberts kidnapping staked out an Eads, Tennessee motel. Special Agent Joanne Overall was part of the surveillance.
Doe Roberts' nephews received a call from the kidnapper, and they tried to make an arranged ransom drop. They were told to go to a motel room, which they did, but they also called the FBI. They were waiting to get a phone call or meet with somebody.
Other surveillance deputies had been unable to find suspect Charles Lord that night. As the team at the motel watched, a man approached. It was Lord. He went to the room the nephews had rented.
Charles Lord told the nephews of Doe Roberts that he had received a call from the kidnapper and that he was to show up there and get the money, and he would receive a phone call as to where to take the money.
But the nephews wouldn't give him the cash. They said they wanted to deal with the kidnapper directly. Investigators were sure that was exactly who they were dealing with.
He is the only individual who had received a telephone call stating that he had talked with Doe Roberts, and now he was meeting with somebody to pick up money, but we did not have enough evidence at that time to go forward with an arrest.
They did, however, increase their focus on Lord. To look for a financial motive to the kidnapping, the FBI subpoenaed Lord's bank records.
We went through records trying to determine if he had loans out, what his financial holdings were, and it became apparent that Charles Lord owed a lot of money to several banks in town, substantial amounts of money, and that he was unable to meet the payments and that he had filed for bankruptcy.
That circumstantial evidence allowed investigators to secure a search warrant for Lord's house. In late June 1993, they served the warrant, which allowed them to look for and seize any financial documents. Some of the files they recovered revealed Lord's criminal past.
He had embezzled over $150,000 from the Memphis depot, where he had retired several years prior, and he had embezzled approximately $70,000 from the church there in Eads, where he was attending.
As treasurer of the church, Lord had access to the parish bank accounts and cash donations. Despite the find, investigators still had no direct evidence of the abduction.
We had nothing that we could use to charge him with the kidnapping and the murder of Doe Roberts. It was important to obtain a confession from Charles Lord because we had no body.
Good, maybe this will help us out a little bit.
One agent working the case was trained in criminal profiling.
He wants more attention.
Analyzing Lord's actions, he offered a behavioral profile to help get the confession.
We have here, we got all these files. Is he gonna repeat his...
He suggested Lord was a manipulative, pathological liar who believed he was untouchable.
going to help us out, but I don't know if it's going
The agent felt that overwhelming the suspect's ego was the only way to beat him.
What you guys need to do is let
The
him...
plan was to bring Lord in for an interview and let him see what he would take to be evidence of a massive investigation against him for months.
push into just confessing.
Agents created numerous evidence boxes, hoping to trump Lord's belief he was above the investigation. Then, on August 25, 1993, at the FBI's Memphis field office, investigators met with Lord and his attorney.
I got some questions about, do you know anything about Mrs. Joe Roberts?
As Charles Lord sat in that room during the interview, I was watching him look at these boxes, realizing that he had been under surveillance for a lot longer than he had anticipated, and he became very nervous.
The FBI's tactics appeared to be working. Lord eventually admitted to making some of the ransom calls. He said he did it to keep the investigation alive for Doe's sake, but denied any involvement in her abduction. Sensing that he was ready to crack, the investigators offered him a deal.
Charles Lord was told by our office, as well as the Shelby County inspector, that if he would take a polygraph and pass a polygraph, we would not look at him any further for the Doe Roberts kidnapping. However, if he failed the polygraph, his attorney and Charles Lord agreed to a further interrogation in reference to the kidnapping.
He agreed. After asking control questions to gauge Lord's truthful response levels, the polygraph examiner asked about Doe, including whether Lord was involved in her abduction.
Did you harm Doe Roberts?
In the end, the examiner believed the polygraph results showed Lord being deceptive. Though the results could not be used in court, they meant authorities could continue questioning the suspect. With Lord's attorney present in the interrogation room, FBI agents and inspectors from the Shelby County Sheriff's Department pressed the suspect, returning again and again to the polygraph results.
I've got every piece of evidence I need, what I need you to do.
At first, he continued to deny involvement, but after several hours, the interview tactics wore him down. Lord said he was ready to tell them what happened. He said he needed cash to pay back his loans and cover the money he stole from the church, and decided to kidnap Doe for ransom. On August 6, 1992, he called the Roberts, posing as a property buyer named Sam Wagner, and arranged to meet Alan. The next day, when he knew Alan was waiting at the development property, he drove by their house. Doe was bringing in the mail.
Doe, there's been an accident.
He knew she would trust him.
Alan's been involved in an accident. Yeah, get in the car and I'll take you to him.
What happened? Do you know? Is he all right?
Lord told investigators he planned to release Doe after he got the ransom, but she suffered a fatal heart attack in his car. He said he panicked and dumped her body and her purse, but he would not say where.
Would you be willing to take us to where she is?
The investigators believed he was lying, at least about planning to release Doe, and perhaps about other details.
You did what you were supposed to do.
Special Agent Joanne Overall knew they had to find the body to check his story. They offered a deal.
Charles Lord agreed to tell us where Doe Roberts' body was after he had confessed to the kidnapping in exchange for Shelby County not pursuing the death penalty.
Lord claimed he dumped her in the Wolf River, a slow-moving river that runs 90 miles across the southwest corner of the state. The Wolf River empties into the Mississippi at Memphis. Lord said he dumped the remains from a bridge in Fayette County, 13 miles from the Roberts' home. divers would begin 50 yards upriver, searching for the body and purse. Lieutenant John Yancey of the Shelby County Sheriff's Department led the dive in the murky river.
We had 21 divers involved total. The visibility in the river was zero. It was total black water.
And in the dark water, several species of venomous snakes. Adding to the challenge was the fact that the crime took place a year earlier. Any remains would be scattered and difficult to find. FBI agents and sheriff's deputies helped the divers by stretching a rope across the river's width. Divers held onto the rope and moved across its length, searching the river bottom by hand.
Normally you do an arm span, arm over arm for a search for a body because it's large. But we were looking for contents of the purse at the time to try to make sure that this was actually the scene. So we had to bring it down to where we were. Instead of doing the large arm spans, we were having to do what I call this the hand grab. And that's where you just get the dirt with your hand. And that way you're able to find everything on the bottom.
Once the divers reached the other bank, the team would move the rope a foot downriver and start over. Anytime a diver found something, he signaled, and additional divers came in to mark and extract the item.
We found a safe that had been taken in a robbery of a cleaner's, and the money had fallen out of the safe, and we found the pennies on the bottom and the dollar bills, but we found no contents of any of her purse. So I feel like if we'd have found pennies on the bottom, we would have found her makeup or a wallet or IDs or anything times back to her.
In 110-degree heat, the team continued their search of every square inch.
On my second day, I was on the bridge, and an elderly lady walked up to me and said, "I want you to do me a favor." And I said, "I'll try to if I can." She said, "I want you to find us something today so we can get this over with, so we can go ahead and bury Doe and get this case over with."
After 3 full days, they had searched a half-mile of the river. They believed the body would not have gone farther than that in the lowland waters.
I went to my boss, my chief, and I told him, I said, based on my experience and what we have done, she's not in here. But if you want us to continue the search, we'll search till it runs into Mississippi. Ever how you want to do it. But I can tell you right now, she's not here.
Investigators were convinced Lord had lied to them, unnecessarily placing the dive team in danger. Special Agent Overall confronted Lord.
We took Charles Lord out to the site and explained to him that these divers were putting their lives in jeopardy and we needed to find the body, and it didn't appear that the body was there.
The suspect had run out of lies. Now he was ready to tell investigators what really happened to Doe Roberts. After a 3-day search of Tennessee's Wolf River, dive leader Lieutenant John Yancey believed the remains of kidnapping victim Doe Roberts were not in the river.
We had searched everywhere possible, and just over the years of experience, I would have found something by now, either some bones, some makeup, or something. I said, based on my experience, she's not in here. There the divers are. She's not there.
Investigators confronted suspect Charles Lord.
The deal's going to come off the table.
Realizing they would not give up until they got the truth, Lord admitted Doe had not died of a heart attack in his car.
They've searched the blood.
He said he took her to his house and tied her up in a room above the garage. He could never let his neighbor go, now. He tried to kill her with sleeping pills. When that didn't work, he smothered her with a pillow. Lord said he buried her in his backyard compost heap. On top of the body, he placed a layer of lime, then concrete, hoping they would hasten decomposition. They needed to determine if Lord was telling the truth this time, to retrieve evidence and give Doe's family the closure of knowing what happened.
Stand by it.
The Sheriff's Department called in forensic anthropologists from the University of Tennessee. After removing layers of leaves and compost, they began the dig. Shelby County Sheriff's Lieutenant Ronald Goodwin supervised the meticulous excavation.
It's just using brushes and little trowels, much like uncovering artifacts. And it's one spoonful at a time to make sure that you don't miss any evidence and make sure you don't do anything to harm what evidence may be with the body.
After 2 hours, they pierced a shell of concrete and lime. In the space underneath, a body.
Well, the first thing that we came to was the hand. The rest of the body was laying flat in the grave site on its back, face up.
It took 17 hours to completely exhume the remains, and what investigators found surprised them.
The skin was intact. The body was in such good condition, I felt like many scientific tests that we could run might reveal. It's poisoning, cause of death, sexual attack, or whatever. It appeared that the actions that Mr. Lord had taken, such as the lime and so forth on top of the body, had worked in reverse, and it had preserved the body for us.
The most chilling detail was the position of the 65-year-old woman's hand.
The only thing that was out of normal position was the hand, which was up in front of her face in a defensive position with the fingers spread.
It appeared to investigators she might not have been dead when she was buried.
Maybe she was still alive. Maybe she was pushing up with her hand.
Over a year after Doe Roberts disappeared, the FBI and Alan Roberts had their evidence. On October 19, 1993, Charles Lord pled guilty to first-degree murder and kidnapping. He was sentenced to life plus 25 years. Doe's husband, Alan, had endured being a suspect for months. Now, with the truth out, he could finally lay Doe to rest. But one challenge remains for Alan Roberts.
It's an uneven closure. I'm trying to forget about Charles Lord, and I'm praying that God will let me forgive him. I'm praying that Doe is in God's hands right now.
Mr. and Mrs. Roberts enjoyed 43 years of marriage before they were torn apart. He has faith that one day he will see her again.